I mean, it is a relief for ByteDance, at least for the moment. As an investor, how do you view this, I guess, messy political game?
Well, it is good news. And again, thank you both for having me on again. It's a pleasure to be with Bloomberg. I just think of this as a distraction. At the end of it, it was 3 or 4 months of wasted effort, very expensive, a lot of news and speculation. We had the CEO of the Americas leave. And it was just a messy overall situation. And I'm actually pretty glad that most things are now behind us and the company can just get back to business and get back to executing.
Well, I guess the biggest uncertainty right now is who will own the new TikTok. Does it make a difference to you who owns it as an investor?
You know, not really. At the end of it, it seems like under the current structure, ByteDance will still have a material ownership stake in the TikTok business. It seems like based on news information that Oracle and Walmart will end up owning a material portion as well, and the last of it being owned by some investors, you know, hopefully pro rata across all investors, as well as the CEO, John Yiming. Does it matter who owns it? It's a great question because at the end of it, the question in my mind is, how will the product development and growth functionality that this company is renowned for continue happening, right? I mean, obviously with the Oracle cloud deal, I'm pretty confident that any concerns anybody had with respect to, you know, TikTok surreptitiously, you know, sending, you know, data back to China should be out of everyone's mind, even though I am of the personal opinion that the company was never doing anything surreptitious to start with. Walmart seems to be another heavy hitter, big political coverage kind of company that seems to be an investor. And from an investor perspective, listen, if the numbers that we hear are correct, you know, a $60 billion valuation for TikTok Global, that should be a price that should please most investors in ByteDance, and me included. And the reason I say that is most of us who've been ByteDance investors for a while knew that TikTok would be a valuable asset, but it's nice to see a number placed on it for investors to kind of think about how big the overall business could be. Does it matter who controls the asset? It does matter, because the reality is that going forward, TikTok cannot, you know, most of TikTok's, the application development has to be likely done in the United States. So if you go back 6 months, 12 months, 1 year, the historical application development process was done in China, and then country-specific customized applications were then sent into different countries. Now, it seems clear to me that that can no longer happen. And so the hope is that TikTok Global will build its own internal team, scale up engineering, scale up product in the US to serve American customers.
Ram, tell me something here. With what's going on, of course, this is a temporary reprieve. There's no doubt going to be more in this whole saga. But tell me, you know, when the $30 billion valuation comes, how does one arrive at that fundamentally?
Well, if you think about the overall TikTok business in America, as per the court proceedings and some information released in the public domain, if I remember right, close to 100 million Americans use the TikTok product. MAUs, monthly active users. That company is therefore bigger than Snapchat, almost as big as Twitter. And so there really are what I call public comms out there. And both those companies trade between $30 and $35 billion of enterprise value, depending on the day. There is a precedent and price available. If you think of TikTok as as an equivalent of Snapchat or Twitter. And I think that's why there were large investors willing to back them, including the big strategics, because the reality is, if you pro forma this business over the next 5 years, my bet is this is going to be as big as YouTube, right? And so in many ways, as an investor coming into the company, a $30 billion number feels like a big price today. But Americans spend 40 to 50 minutes on TikTok every single day. That is a highly engaged source of customers, especially younger customers, and very highly targeted as well. So the real prize here is TikTok Global could really be as big as YouTube outside of China. And I think that's the prize that the big strategics were going after.
So, Ram, you know, with all this going on, has it in any way made you think twice about perhaps investing in future Chinese tech companies? And I'm not just talking about here, but I mean, look at the rest of the noise surrounding WeChat, and on top of that, even companies like SMIC, SMIC.
You know, listen, I mean, to be clear, we do not invest in China H shares or A shares. So to the extent we invest in China, and a little more than 30% of our portfolio today is invested in Chinese companies, we invest primarily in Hong Kong and on the US ADR market. And so to the extent, my belief is the highest quality companies will always be listed either in Hong Kong or in the US ADR market. And so we don't really care about the rest of the Chinese, individual companies. Now, that said, I have a very pragmatic view here on this, which is at the end, at Octahedron, we're looking to find the best entrepreneurs globally. And whether that's in China or Latin America or in America, it actually doesn't really matter to us. Ultimately, my sense is capitalism will find a way.
Ram, you say that the issues are behind them, but this is a temporary injunction, so it's yet to play out. And plus, we have a reaction from the Commerce Department saying that they will pretty much defend the executive order and its implementation vigorously. I mean, there are risks here.
Listen, I think that's totally true. Again, I think when I said it's behind us for today. I mean, this saga has been so interesting to watch that every single day, I can just imagine Yiming, and I texted him briefly a while ago, and he's like, he didn't respond to me, but I can just imagine being in his shoes and being thrown a new curveball every morning. So I'll tell you the way we think about the business, right? I mean, one of the challenges in this company is it's not been clear if a Chinese company can actually win the Western markets. We've seen the big companies try in the past and mostly fail. And so the one glimmer of hope was actually to have a global Chinese company. And what's incredible about ByteDance is they've always wanted to be a global company from the get-go. This is not an expansionary story for them. So that said, the way we thought about Americas and our valuation model is we actually gave very little value to the Americas business model. It was all kind of icing on the cake, right? So if it happened, fantastic. If it did not happen, it doesn't matter. In fact, Facebook has publicly said that, listen, historically, the retention on the TikTok app in America was so low, it did not matter. Now, that has obviously changed over time. The reality, though, is ByteDance is such an innovative company. And even if they got shut down in the US, let's say the worst case outcome was they were told to shut down, go home, you're never going to have any sort of access in America, that's still an okay outcome. And the reason I say this is, by my estimates, the company was spending $1 billion to $2 billion in the US alone in OPEX. Now, the company at a parent level will just recapture all that spend, and those $2 billion will be available for China operations. But the money is not the problem in this company. The problem is, the opportunity is the people and the management bandwidth. If they close down the US, the reality is that would just open up an incredible amount of engineering, product, and management bandwidth to focus on solutions in China outside of Douyin and TikTok. And they've got huge amounts of ambitions in gaming and education and full-form content.
Ram, very quickly, a last question, and it's something which has really been a bit of a head-scratcher. What does Oracle, and more saliently perhaps, what does Walmart get out of a company should this actually go through?
I am quite surprised about the Walmart connection, and I haven't really internalized what that means. From Oracle's perspective, it's really very simple. Oracle gets a marquee cloud customer after Zoom. TikTok can benefit from Oracle's deep ties to DC at the moment under the current administration. TikTok spends $500, $600, $700 million in cloud spend every year. That's a direct input into Oracle's somewhat struggling cloud business. And TikTok doesn't really care because infrastructure is infrastructure. And for Oracle, they are buying TikTok Global at what I think is a steal on a multi-year basis.